Felix and Parvati discussing the latest Aetherwave serial. I am pleased to inform you that we have arrived at the labyrinth. Please be advised that electrical storms on the surface of resident count is as follows: 3,071. Resident deaths, including but not limited to executions, are as follows: 1,684. The interior can be chilled. I would also ask that you leave your captain's ID with me. In the event that... Understood. If you die or are incarcerated for life... Oh, speak of the devil.
Attention, unauthorized spacecraft. This is a maximum security installation. Your presence here is an explicit violation of UDL corporate policy. You are hereby confined to your docking platform until a ticket detailing your crimes has been filed and notarized, at which point your vessel will be seized and you will be executed. I'm sorry, you people? Did you just cast a generalization on upstanding UDL employees? You're up to 5,708, not including the cost. Huh? Oh, yes, sir. Right away, sir. I just couldn't see you clearly before. Screen's on the fritz. Damn thing. But for the record, now that I hear you, I totally recognize you. Totally. You're, you, of course. Obviously. Anyway, Tartarus Docking Authority signing off. Have a pleasant stay at Tartarus.
Transmission terminated. Biometric ID received. Transferring data to external cartridge. How can I be of assistance? Goodbye. I'll lock up behind you.
Better take a look. Here they come! Get the finger back up! have a lot of shooting to do, Captain. Looking good.
Panic beginning.
Are you new here? Oh, no.
Understood. I'll keep my head down.
Get in there, troops! For Monarch! For Halcyon!
Are you new here? Oh, that's great. Much.
Someone's near.
I saw. Hold it. No, I meant your uniform. Yep. Over.
Well, look. I'll be damned. I was. I knew I smelled Monarch when you lot walked in. The stench of self.
Keep talking, you'll be smelling iron.
And the convicts. The Vic. Oh, I would go. When you go off and get your. My word. It's a wonder what Phineas saw in you. Then again.
Pathetic. Waste of company ammo. Pathetic.
Are you new here? Whoa. Okay.
Everything in my life has been leading up to this point. I believe I am ready for this.
Take a breath now, folks. Once we're up there, I suspect we ain't gonna have time to stop shooting.
Captain, you have an uncanny talent for complicating my life. You've been working with Dr. Wells from the beginning. When we moved to arrest him, he was prepared. I lost good soldiers in the attempt. You've disrupted the balance of power. You've upset the natural order of things. You've introduced uncertainty, and there is nothing I despise more than uncertainty. Typical. Running your mouth in the middle of a crisis. It's almost as if you delight in chaos. I should have dealt with you a long time ago. You were always too dangerous to leave unchecked. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised by your impertinence. Leaving you alive was my greatest mistake, but it is a mistake I intend to correct. I have Dr. Wells in my custody. Once I've secured his cooperation, I can move forward with... Fair enough. This prison is equipped with an automechanical warden. I've had it and don't worry.
Everyone all right?
Why won't you just die?
I can hardly believe my eyes. You didn't have to do this, you know. Risk your life just to save mine. No, I expect they didn't. You're a force of nature, aren't you? You've left the board in tatters, but Halcyon is still on the verge of starvation. I just hope you and I are... Earth has gone dark. 2 years ago, the Earth's Directorate's frigate disappeared on their way back to Earth. We don't know what they discovered when they...
So we've got to make do on our own. Seems to me that'll make us stronger in the...
You're quite right.
Earth is only an idea to us. But that idea is the bedrock the colony is built upon. If people were to find out it's gone dark...
I don't want to imagine what'll happen once new... Earth isn't going to help us. No one's going to help us now. We're alone. Yeah? I don't know what happened, but something must have gone horribly wrong. I don't know why Earth's gone silent. I don't even know if Earth exists anymore. We have no connection back to Earth, and return is likely impossible. We're completely alone out here. I heard it from Akande herself. She tried to pressure me into joining her side, you see. Tried to make me realize that all hope is lost, and that we are alone. She was half right. We are alone. You might have heard of the Earth Directorate's frigate. Half the colony's entire military was on that ship. That was 2 years ago. Yes, Akande mentioned as... Akande had kept the truth to herself. I wasn't trying to hide the truth. Yes, I experimented on the hopes. You are my first and only success. I'm not asking you to forgive me. My apologies. If you have... I had hoped your fellow colonists might hold the key to saving it. I'll do what I can. It's time I return to my lab. I'll try to save as many... I had a feeling you might say. I've spent 35 years obsessing over the Hope's colonists. We were going to save this colony, you know. That's what I told myself when I pulled... Now, I don't know what to think. Earth is gone. I always suspected Halcyon.
The OSI teaches that everything in the universe happens according to the grand plan. But the stranger that arrived in Halcyon was an unplanned variable. From the moment he landed in Emerald Vale, his actions altered the course of history. The events on Tartarus brought about the end of the board's authority. But the board's mistakes would haunt the colony for decades to come. The damage they left behind would require the work of a generation to repair. Dr. Phineas Wells began reviving a handful of the Hope's colonists. Engineers, scientists, technicians, and intellectuals. They were among the brightest minds the Earth had ever sent out into the stars. The Hope scientists and engineers woke up in a colony descending headlong into total collapse. With no way to return to Earth, they had no choice but to band together and devote themselves to the cause of saving Halcyon. The people of Halcyon were nothing if not hardy. In the absence of the board's authority, many of the colony's settlements banded together with a single purpose in mind: survival. Life was especially hard in the years to come. Some towns dissolved by attrition and starvation, but most of them found a way to carry on. In the years to come, Halcyon was forced to reckon with its newfound freedom. The board was gone, and for better or worse, the colony was responsible for its own destiny. As the colony struggled to survive, the inspirational story of the Iconoclasts spread like wildfire. and Graham was able to bring many of the smaller Terra 2 townships into the fold. However, his zealous obsession with spreading the word blinded him to the needs of a growing organization, and the movement was unsustainable at scale. The iconoclast way seemed to work best, and ultimately petered out on Monarch. Sublight Salvage adapted to the changes in Halcyon, shifting their business model to suit the times. Their claims of legitimacy were scrutinized, but ultimately unquestioned. Lilia Hagen would continue to protect her family as ruthlessly as ever. The collapse of Edgewater left its workers bereft of any purpose in life. Most of them made their way to Adelaide McDevitt's camp, hoping to ingratiate themselves into her favor. Adelaide accepted only a few to her community. The rest were turned away, and likely died of starvation. Nevertheless, Adelaide's camp grew into a well-established town. Adelaide McDevitt refused to cooperate with the ongoing effort to save Halcyon from collapse. A sympathetic deserter stole a copy of her research and delivered it to the Hope's scientists. It is unclear how useful Adelaide's research was. An optimistic estimate suggests her work may have bought Halcyon another few years of survival. Adelaide would never know. She died that winter. Junlei Tennyson fought to protect the Groundbreakers' independence. While the board's influence faded, mechanical difficulties forced her to rely on parts that only corporations could provide. The cost was high, and time would tell if Junlei could balance the work with her aspirations for a better future. The rediscovery of the Hope and the abandonment of the lifetime employment program forced Byzantium to come to terms with some uncomfortable realities about the state of Halcyon. While Byzantines were reluctant to surrender the luxuries they'd grown accustomed to, the board's diminished authority gave them little choice in the matter. Nearly everyone had to learn to make do with less. Some even had to get jobs. It was a dark time indeed. Life in Halcyon was sobering for Felix Millstone. The grand revolution he dreamed of never came. There was no great awakening for the colony, no celebrations in the streets. There was only the hard, desperate work of trying to repair a broken colony. Felix never had a head for numbers, but if there was labor to be done, he was there to help. Eventually, Felix realized that the work of a revolution was done with two hands. As much as he enjoyed his adventures aboard the Unreliable, the vicar, known as Max, eventually decided that it was time to move on, to live out the life he had sought so long to create. He knew there were many in the colony who carried burdens much worse than the ones he had struggled with, and he devoted himself to easing their suffering wherever he could. He only ever took up arms again to defend the defenseless. Unshackled from a lifetime of striving and fighting the universe and himself, Vicar Maximilian de Soto was finally at peace. Though Parvati eventually grew comfortable aboard the Unreliable, she never quite came out of her shell. She seemed to prefer the company of Ada to the crew, and she could often be found neck-deep in cables and grease, telling Ada funny stories from her childhood. While the colony fell into chaos, she found an island of relative peace with Ada, and they formed an unusual bond. She decided to remain aboard the Unreliable permanently as its chief and sole engineer. Nyoka returned to Monarch to take another crack at making a permanent life for herself. She formed the Charon Group, a mercenary outfit of ragtag survivalists and wilderness experts. Anyone in need of a guide, or just looking to throw back a beer and swap stories, could find her camping on the trail or clearing an infestation. Before his untimely death, Captain Alex Hawthorne had plans to restore and modify, for combat purposes, a sanitation and maintenance automechanical that he'd found in a state of disrepair in Emerald Vale's scrapyard. That unit remains broken down and forgotten in the Unreliable supply closet to this day. Minister Clark was released from house arrest, and his contact with you gave him a sense of renewed purpose and vigor. Once it became clear that no help would be coming from Earth, he threw his considerable efforts and talents into helping Halcyon manage the crisis before it. As for Dr. Phineas Wells, he spent his remaining years in his orbital lab. He was never able to come to terms with his own past, troubled by the decision of placing all his faith in the first colonist he ever revived, the infamous Captain of the Unreliable. The revival project yielded mixed results. Phineas, weighed down by limited support and his own guilt, struggled to revive more than a handful of scientists and engineers. They made a heroic effort to solve the colony's problems, but with small numbers and facing long odds, their solutions never caught on. Only a few of the Hope's colonists were successfully revived. Wells died before he could see the fruits of his labor. He passed away a haunted man, crushed by the guilt of his failures. Small, petty factions squabble over what remains of the colony. Every attempt to reach out to Halcyon's neighbors is met with silence. And what about you, the unplanned variable in the history of Halcyon? You brought an end to the chaos on Tartarus and left Dr. Wells to his own devices. The affairs of the colony never distracted you from living out your own dreams, to captain a ship, to sail the ether, and to earn a reputation as the greatest spacer Halcyon ever had. No one knows what's happened to Earth, and no one knows what the future has in store for Halcyon. All we know for certain is this: the name of the Unreliable and that of its intrepid captain will remain the subject of countless stories for years to come.